So the problem with instant history is that it's constructed to serve the present, and it's almost always wrong. And yes, I probably wouldn't have said this if it weren't for the sort of all the Steve Jobs stuff that's out there. But I have a very strong sense that we're not here doing what we're doing because of what Apple did in the last 20 years. That has had a huge effect. It was important. Jobs had a certain brilliance. But we're on a path that started quite a long time ago. And I just want, Engelbart inventing the mouse in 67, the Alto at Xerox PARC with Alan Kay and other people there that made a machine that was more powerful than the Macintosh 10 years earlier, one that, in fact, Jobs was very inspired by. The work of Negroponte and others at the Architecture Machine Group Lab in the late 70s and early 80s that absolutely showed us that the notion of a page could be expanded to include audio, video, and code. So what does this have to do with social reading? It's this word social. We talk about the web sometimes, like the web 2.0, as if social was something that got grafted on top of the web, but on top of the internet. But that's just not the case. I found this illustration. These are the first 4 nodes on the ARPANET, which of course became the internet in 1969. It was University of UC Santa Barbara, UCLA, SRI, and Utah, where Ivan Sutherland and Alan Kay and a whole bunch of other people were. Because the internet was actually, social was not an add-on. The internet was created specifically to enable people to work and play with other people. That was its purpose. And so social reading is not an add-on. It's not like an optional topping on a pizza. Social reading is a foundational cornerstone of the new media ecology which the internet is enabling. It's not a choice. It is at the core of where we are going. Now, I know a lot of you, don't agree yet, et cetera, but in the same way that in 1992 we could say with assurance that reading was going to move onto screens eventually, we can say with assurance today that social reading is going to be at the core of our reading experience in the future. The reality is, though, that we have to change much more than just the shape or location of a work. When we did CD-ROMs, we would put these packages into Borders or Tower or Barnes & Noble, and they were happy to put them in there, and they put them on the shelf, but of course there was no way to browse them. It made it extremely difficult to sell these things because there was no browsing mechanism. We hadn't changed enough. Realistically, if we're really going to make a difference, we're going to have to change the whole ecosystem of publishing. And I'm just going to, these are sort of a bunch of points I'm going to make. We can talk about them later. We have to make online browsing actually pleasurable. Serendipity is a key here. Sooner or later, we're going to have to enable people to subscribe to collections of content. And so this is going to, what that'll do is it won't just be people who bought this also bought that. It's going to be the people interested in this subject subscribe to so-and-so's list or channel. Why did they do it? Because they really trusted her curation, and because they trusted the fact that she attracted other people who, in fact, you might want to interact with. Apps can be very cool. I don't know if you've seen the subtext yet, but it lets you actually put annotations in by speech. It's fantastic, but it can only be done right now on an iPad app. But apps are very cool, but they reproduce one of the more problematic aspects of print, the isolation of one book from another. We live in an open web, And we need to be able to search across libraries and collections. It just drives me nuts when I'm in some app and something occurs to me and I have to leave the app, go to the web, et cetera. It shouldn't be that way. Everything should be in a very active, dynamic browser. We have to enable a group of people to buy into the same book, right? It's not because sometimes you're going to want to read actually with a specific group of people, and you want to end up in the same copy of the book with them. Writers, editors, and publishers need to communicate directly with readers. A lot of people say this, a lot of people give they use the words, but nobody's really done it yet in a fundamental way. I'm talking about the commercial platforms. They need to enable authors and publishers to communicate with their readers. They shouldn't be the principal obstacle preventing it. I showed this in Frankfurt last week. I mean, can you imagine this is a page in Amazon where actually it's branded as a Penguin book? We have to build a marketplace for people who have creative and innovative ideas for new kinds of publishing. Think about what Apple did when they put out the iTunes and the App Store. They created a marketplace for tens of thousands of young kids who all of a sudden could write some code, which they knew how to do really well. They could make productivity software. They could make games. Apple gave them a place to sell it. Apple gave them a marketplace. You could argue that what they did, in effect, was they did an intellectual roll-up of sort of unprecedented proportions. But we need to give a marketplace. We need to provide a marketplace for people who have new ideas for publishing. We have to nurture an amateur space as well as a commercial one. It shouldn't be that in order to put something out into the world, you have to put it into a commercial environment. There should be a place, like YouTube, for new kinds of documents. Lastly, we need tools so that people can stop enhancing print books and start creating born digital works. Whether those are tools to make EPUB 3s or other documents that are that really do allow somebody to mix and match text, graphics, audio, video, and code. Oh, that's at the end. Okay, so now I want to show you for a few minutes social book. So I suppose most of you know my history, but just in case, I mean, I'm basically a publisher, and I did a lot of early electronic publishing, Criterion Collection, Voyager, CD-ROMs, the first ebooks, but I spent a lot of the last years making tools that would let people make sort of complex electronic books. And then also got very involved in this whole question of what happens when you put a text online, you enable people to start to have a conversation in the margins. And it took me a long time to sort of put together sort of a dream team of people to work with to build sort of what we think is an entirely new, from scratch platform for publishing. And it's called Social Book. And I'm going to show you sort of the first bit of it, which is sort of the reading experience. This is going to be released in a private beta next month, and it's going. I'll explain at the end what we're doing come January. I want to show you some of the really cool things here about what it means to have a book in a browser. So I just love this. I just open up the book, and this has nothing to do with Social Book, right? This is just Chrome. It asks if it wants to translate the book. So I don't know if anybody's been looking closely at Google Translate, but it's actually getting better and better. And in fact, I showed this to the author of this book the other day, and she was extremely impressed. And she's a Spanish teacher. So when you start to think about the fact that a book in a browser in any language is suddenly going to be accessible to everybody, that's just a mind-bogglingly huge benefit of having books in browsers. Let's go back to the library. We've got audio and video working sort of flawlessly in the books.
Getting the book invented properly has been a long, hard slog for mankind. Early attempts at it were dogged by hardware problems.
I won't show you video, but I'm sure you'll trust me that it works. There we go. So I want to show you how easy it is to put a book into Social Book. I'm going to go to a website, just an ordinary website. I'm not going to put a book, I'm going to make a book. So I'm going to take this text here. It's an interview that Hans Ulrich Obrist did with Julian Assange. And I'm just going to go up here and under services, sorry, create EPUB with selected text. And I'm going to call this Assange. And it's not by me, it's by Hans Ulrich Obrist. And then I'm going to go back to Social Book, and I'm going to go to Upload, and I'm going to choose. And there's the book I just made a few minutes ago, or a few seconds ago. I'm going to upload that. I'm going to upload a cover that I did make earlier, but trust me, it only took me a minute. And then I'm going to publish that. I could have put metadata in, I didn't. And then I'm going to go, and so here's the book, it's already here. I can go and I could start a group with it, or I could just read it myself, and it's functioning. I want to show you how Social Book actually, how the conversation works in Social Book in another book where I actually sort of preloaded it. Here, on civil disobedience, I thought this was sort of a apropos subject. So I'm reading this book with John Berger and Octavia Butler, and I'm not even sure who that is. And so we have this concept of an initiating comment. So you notice here there are different colors here. This means that more than one of us has actually made an initiating comment in this section. So I've made a comment here, and this person has responded, so has this person, so has this person. And then Octavia responded to me, Aldous Huxley responded to Octavia, and Berger responded to Octavia as well. This was Berger's comment, this was Octavia's response to Berger, this was Aldous Huxley's response to Octavia. We've enabled a very rich threaded conversation, which we don't think people will get confused about as they go through it. One of the things last year, if you'll remember, if you were here last year, on the occasion of the Books and Browsers meeting, I put up a draft suggestion for sort of taxonomy of social reading. And I got slammed really hard by everybody who commented in that. And they said that I was favoring the conversation among people I knew way over the conversation that was taking place more generally in society. And thanks in part to the work of Corey Mencher and his colleagues at BetaWorks, who, with findings, what we've done is we've integrated the community's comments here as well. So here are comments by a whole bunch of other people in the system who are not in my group, but I can scroll through their comments and I can see them. one by one, and I can respond to them, etc. So that I'm able to sort of participate in a close reading with people I know and trust, but we're able to bring in the wisdom of a much larger crowd. So next month we start a private beta. In January, we're going to launch a public beta of what we call functionally a YouTube for social documents. Anybody will be able to upload anything into this system just as easily as I did. And they'll be able to set it to public or private. Public, well, let's start with private. Private means only they can start a group around it and that it won't be seen by anybody else. Public means that anybody can start a group around that document. Then we'll keep improving that. And that will always be free. There will be no commerce there. That we're always going to maintain a place for people, teachers and others who just have a need to put things into a social reading space and use it with others. In about a year from January, we're going to put out a commercial platform where we're going to enable anybody, well, no, excuse me, take that word away, completely erase that word. We're going to allow people to put things up into a commercial space. Interestingly, we're building a platform that has a business model that doesn't require a single publisher to actually sign on to this system. Not because we don't think they will, not because we don't wish they would, but because we know that big publishers are very cautious. They have these huge legacy businesses to protect. And if we built a model that required big publishers to come in, and that's where we're going to make our money from, we would die on the vine before we had a chance to get going. So we did something, I think, that's the most radical thing that we did, was we came up with a different model. And it had a lot to do with the iTunes App Store that I was discussing earlier, because we realized, we thought a lot about why is publishing so hierarchical, why is it structured the way as it is, and it's a long story, way too long to go into here, but it has everything to do with print and what print demands of structures that get created around it. And we realized, though, that in the world we were about to enter, that we didn't have those same problems and that we could build a much flatter structure. So what we're doing is we're coming up with a very, very rigorous and robust application form that anybody can fill out. And if they get through it on the other side, they will become approved social book editors. And an approved social book editor is going to be given access to a very powerful back office where they can upload their EPUBs, they can upload 176 different fields of Onyx metadata, they can do their marketing from there, and they can do all of their bookkeeping from there. In effect, we're going to set them up with all the tools they need to be publishers. And we think this is going to work. We think that there are thousands of people all over the world who have ideas and skills and time who are going to start to do things that, some that we can imagine, some that we can't imagine. And that we think that the platform can grow from there. And one of the things that I didn't show, which I should have, let me see if I've got it here. View, oh, I know, Command-Shift-F. That didn't work. View content only. Oh, I see it. You're seeing it differently than I am. Never mind. Two things I didn't show you because we're not ready yet. They're not in the system yet. One is the concept of a gloss. We realized that if somebody went through an entire book and marked it up, because you can be a group of one in the social book, and they just happen to maybe like be an expert on that subject, they would have created a gloss. So this is an example. This is a page from Guns, Germs, and Steel, and you can click on the gloss tab that happens to be that's here, and that brings up a list of glosses that are available. Think of a gloss as an in-book purchase. It doesn't have to be for sale. It could be free, but think of it as think of it as a completely new and more powerful form of Spark Notes or Cliff Notes. You know, I love using this book because it's a long 500-page dense book that I'd really like to read, but I'm probably never going to because I'm a slow reader, and it just won't happen. But if I could buy this book and buy it with a gloss by an expert who I trust, I could skim this book in an evening. But it's really different than a Cliff Note, because it's not a digest. I'm actually in the book. So if I come to a passage which the expert has annotated, and it's interesting, I'm in the book. I can just stay there and keep reading. So this is going to be a very, very important area for new editor publishers to explore. Imagine being able, Tale of Two Cities is free on the internet pretty much, but I would pay a lot of money to have an historian's gloss on Tale of Two Cities to understand that book in terms of the history, which is what actually interests me more than anything else. The other, why can't I? Please stop it. No, not that one. Let's see if it's this one. Okay, yeah, this one. The other thing is there's another tab that basically says extras or author. This is a place where the editor, the author, the publisher can speak directly to the reader of the book. They can announce author readings that take place inside the book. They can recommend other things, et cetera, et cetera. And so all of that is going to be in the commercial platform when it comes out in about a year. Peter just said I had 4 more minutes, so I want to take 2 questions if there are any. Yeah. The business model. For the commercial platform, yeah, we'll take a cut. Exactly what it is, I don't know. We're really going to build a platform where we see the people who publish on it as our colleagues and the ones we're working with. So we're going to make it as cheap as we can so that it works for everybody. We're going to really try to build sort of the anti-Amazon platform. As far as the free version, I think that there will be all kinds of different ways, like Vimeo, where you're going to pay to store things forever. I mean, I have this thing where I have my first granddaughter was born about 1.5 years ago, and 20 years from now, I really want her to be able to read my notes in Tale of Two Cities. But 20 years from now, it's not likely to be in the same software system, in the same browser, et cetera. So we have a commitment at Social Book to support whatever platform is developed by NISO and others for annotations. But the question is, who's going to store my annotations for 20 years till Penelope's ready to read it? And so there may be charges for things like that. It's possible there'll be advertising of some sort in the free version. I'm not so much worried about the model here, because I think that this is a platform that, if it works, is going to have a lot of use, and it'll have lots of revenues, and maybe one more if it's a fast one. Yes, you can sign up, Michael. Basically, the first 50 of you that sign up will get invited next month, and then the next 50 shortly thereafter. Anyway, thank you very much.